Hi, okay, so this is the first lesson of the modular phone stand practical tasks. So you'll have three pieces of plywood. You can tell plywood from these layers, and two of the pieces have these slots routed into them. So a router will actually cut these slots for you. So you've got a shorter space and a longer space. You can see here they're both the same like that. But you need to turn them like this so that you've got all three pieces arranged like this. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is label them. So you're going to label them with a letter. So we've got A, B is the middle, and then C. After you've labeled them, which will enable you to put them back together in the right order every single time, you might notice that there's some very rough edges from where they've been cut. So those can be sanded off just with a little bit of the light yellow sandpaper. So you just want to tidy those up. So once you've got those all tidied up, we're then going to mark the areas that you're going to cut. So we're going to do some wood joints. Okay, so obviously each of these pieces just needs a little tidy up with the sandpaper first before you start this. So we've got them labeled, and then we want to measure the middle of A. Okay, so it should be 40 millimeters wide, and if it's a little bit over, you can kind of position your ruler. It might be 42 millimeters. But mark the middle of that with a little mark there. Okay, so we've given ourselves a middle mark. So the next thing you want to do is use a tri-square, which is useful for making right-angled lines. And we're going to put our piece of wood against the edge of the tri-square like that. And we're going to just extend this middle line. Now you need to make sure that there's no gap on the back between this wood and the edge, so that then this line is at an exact right angle to the edge of the wood. So we're just going to mark it a little bit like that. Now what we're going to do is just use this as a template to mark the others. Okay, so we're going to put B and A together and mark that, and then we can put it against C and mark that one. Okay, when you come to mark the other side of B, you can use C to look yourself a middle mark. Okay, so we've measured one, and then we're using it as a template to mark the middle of the other three edges. After you've done that, you need to use the tri-square again. Get in the habit of going back to using this handy tool because it saves you a lot of time. We want to make sure again that there's no gap when this wood's pressed up against there. And you can kind of double check by just kind of seeing if this space is the same as this space, and then you know that it's at a good right angle. And we're going to draw a line all the way across it like that. C, we also need to do the same. So we're just going to pop the tri-square on that edge and just extend that line a little bit. You'll notice that one side is nice and clean. There's no rough edges on here, and this will be the outside of your product. So you don't need to worry too much about these edges. If you just tidy them up a little bit, they'll be fine. So after we've got to this stage, we now need to mark the thickness of the wood. So we're going to take one of the pieces of wood and we're going to put it on its end. So A joins to B. We're going to put A on its end on top of B. And we just want to make sure that it's right up against the edge, like that. But you want to do it on the table so that you can mark it. So I'm just going to put my thumb here to hold it in position. I've checked that it's flush up against the edge. They're both in line with each other. So now I'll just give myself a pencil mark there. So you should have that. And then we're going to do B to A. So we're going to sit B up on its edge on top of A like this. Just make sure that those lines meet, those middle lines meet up. And we're just going to pencil the thickness of the plywood on that. So now we've got these two spaces marked. We're going to do the same to B and C. Okay, so now we've got A, B, and C. We've got the thickness marked, we've got the middle space marked. The next thing we want to do is we want to mark the bits that we're going to remove. So if we take away this bit on A, so I'll scribble it out to show that I'm removing. Don't colour it in, just do a little scribble to tell yourself that that's coming out. So that means we keep this one, and we're going to switch around and we're going to remove that one on B. Now on the other side of B, I'd like you to remove the same bit there, so the top bit. And then on C, we switch over to the opposite, so we're going to remove this bit. Okay, so we're going to cut those sections out so they interlock like a jigsaw, and that will form a basic comb joint. So those are the cuts that we need to make. And then the other thing we need to do is actually mark the ends of A and C, ready to curve them and also to drill the holes. So the thickness or the width of this wood is about 40 millimeters. So the middle would be at 20 millimeters. I'm going to use a tri-square again. I'm going to make a longer line from our mark. Just to bring that back like that. I'm going to do the same on C. Always put them back together in the right order. Now I want to drill a hole that's 20 millimeters in from the end on this line. Take my ruler, put it up against the edge. I'm just going to mark at 20 millimeters there. So that's where I'm going to be drilling my hole. I'm going to do the same on C as well. There we go. Finally, we've got that space marked to drill, but I also want to curve these edges also. So I need a compass. So here's my compass. I'm going to put our pencil in, bring the points together, point of the pencil and the pin, and then tighten this onto the pencil there so it doesn't slip. Next we're going to get C, and we're going to push our pin against where our hole is going to be drilled and bring our pencil to the edge of the wood, so it just touches the wood. And then what we want to do is mark a curve using the compass, just like that. So now we know we need to remove that edge or that corner so it's curved. Want to do it on the opposite edge, so over here. So we're going to do it to A as well. Sometimes it's easier to turn the wood than the compass. You might just want to slightly adjust that so it matches up with the size of the wood. Oops, that's a bit too much. So I'm just going to follow my outer line on that. I shouldn't have given myself 2 pencil marks, but I can scribble this bit to show that I'm going to remove that later. And then I'm going to remove this bit later as well. Okay, so back together in the correct order. So you're going to use the scroll saw to remove these scribbled areas. You're also going to trim off a little bit of this back about 2 or 3 millimeters from that pencil line on the curve, and then you're going to use the disc sander or the belt sander just to sand that curve. And my advice is to always sand up to your pencil line but not over it, so you don't remove the pencil line and you've always got a reference of the shape you're trying to create. You also need to make sure before you're working on the cutting is that we remove any splinters from the edges of the wood. So I'd suggest to all of you get some sandpaper and do a bit of work on the edges of the wood just to tidy them up, because they will be a bit rough and they might give you a splinter, and you don't want that to happen. Okay, so that's marking out the main 3 pieces of plywood for your modular phone stand. So good luck.